Good afternoon on what is a hot, bright and sunny day. It is Wednesday the 13th of July and I've got a nice hot cup of tea and a box to continue delving into. So from this I have already pulled forth this, which is the Homeworld's Revelations Quick-Start, issue 3 of level 1. So we've got in here a Strange Light Breaks for the Iron Kingdoms, a Familiar Problem, Skitterwarp, Bridge of the Durgar Cult, Pathfinder, Fistful of Flowers, and you see Three Wizard Conundrum, and also Curse of the Dead Marsh Crew. Now what these have all got in common is that they are all releases for Free RPG Day 2022, which took place on June 25th in the United States, and then internationally it takes place on July 23rd. And it's thanks to the generosity of David Salisbury of Fanboy 3, I have all of these titles available before the event to do an unboxing and then do subsequent reviews of them as and when I can. Now let's reach in and grab the next item, which is Root, the Talon Hill Quick-Start for Root, the role-playing game. Now this is published by Magpie Games, and it's based upon the asymmetric board game set in a giant woodland from Leader Games, in which you control different factions, like the Eries faction, which is a faction of birds, the Marquis the Cat faction, the Woodland Alliance and so on, and then vagabonds in between, and they all have different abilities and powers and so on in the board game, and they're basically fighting for territory or clearings. But Magpie Games have taken that and produced a role-playing game called Root Role-Playing Game, based upon the board game. So, war has returned to the woodland. The Marquis de Cat led her armies to victory over many of the clearings, but the Erie dynasties rise again to oppose her. And the mice, rabbits and foxes of the woodland do not sit idly by. The Woodland Alliance emerges, a homegrown rebellion to free the woodland from any oppressors. In the midst of this war, you and your friends, vagabonds all, travel between the clearings. You take on the jobs that no one else will or can do. You choose whom you serve, if anyone, and you may tip the balance of the war. Root, the role-playing game, is based upon the award-winning Root, a game of woodland might and right board game by Leader Games. In Root, the RPG, you play vagabonds, going on adventures and changing the woodland by your actions. This booklet is a sampling of the core rules of Root, the role-playing game, complete with 6 pre-generated characters and an entire pre-written clearing to give you a strong starting situation for a few sessions of play. Open the book, give it a read, pick some characters and get playing. All you need is some paper, pencils and pairs of 6-sided dice. So, this is in fact I think the third one of these that Magpie Games has done, so it's pointing towards the popularity of Root as a role-playing game. And it's all fantastically illustrated by the same artwork as the board game, which really captures sort of like the anthropomorphic feel of the game, even though it's fairly gritty, grim and gritty in places. So we open up and we've got the basic moves. And the basic moves are those kind of moves that your average player character in Root is going to be doing. Now the system is powered by the Apocalypse, so you've got things like attempt a roguish feat, figure someone out, persuade an NPC, read a tense situation, trick an NPC, trust fate, wreck something, help or interfere, plead with the PC and so on. And you've got a whole list of all the roguish feats down below. Not every character has access to all of them. In fact, essentially each type of player character has access to 1 or 2. And then we get into an explanation of the setting, and this will be familiar, of course, if you already have a copy of Root, the role-playing game, or indeed you've read any of these quick starts before. Magpie Games is very good at putting these up ahead of time. Or basically very quickly afterwards, and making them available basically for general access. I leave explanations of sort of like which characters you could choose, who they are, playbooks, names, species, looks, stats, backgrounds, drivers, natures, and so on. And everything on here explains all about them. And you'll find that at the back of the actual characters at the back of the quick start. And then, so it's basically just a couple of pages of introduction, the overview, the characters, and then playing route to the role-playing game. And in general, what you're doing, if it comes to the mechanics, you're rolling 2 6-sided dice and aiming to get 7 or more, essentially, to succeed. And typically, 7 or more, you succeed with a complication, or basically a yes, but, and then on 10 plus, you succeed. So here we're going through these various feats in more detail, including weapon moves, because obviously sometimes everything's going to break out into combat. And you've got various different moves, most of them special. So engaging melee, grappling enemy, sort of like, yeah, anyone can do that. But then you've got cleave or confuse senses, harrier group, vicious strike or trick shot, all special moves by the various player characters and some of the NPCs as well. And then we've got reputation moves, because you can build up reputation with the various different factions in the Woodland. Some of this is, we've got harm tracks and explanation of equipment, so quite a lot of the rules to go through. But again, if you've read these before, you'll be familiar. But they are in general well written, well presented, and easy to understand. And essentially, we've got references for the game master at this point. Before we get to Talon Hill itself, and this is essentially starts off with how to use this clearing, and your explanation of what the clearing is, what it's about. And a clearing write-up is like this, what presents clearing the woodland, fleshed out enough detail to make it easy to run at your table without giving you a clear, rigid adventure to follow. So what you've got is literally a scenario. Here's a setup. Here's a situation. How things will happen will be utterly up to the player characters, and every conflict, because you've got to start the conflicts here, okay, which will explain the conflict in detail, and will always give you an explanation of what happens if the player characters don't get involved and do nothing. What happens then? So, description of Talon Hill and what it looks like at first sight. And then we've got the different conflicts: into chaos, a red lizard, the hatchling air, and so on. And then descriptions down below, how it develops, what happens if the players don't get involved. Important residents, all the NPCs, and they look very similar to sort of like player characters to an extent, but they've been much simplified. And then we have important places and special rules, because every clearing is different. There's always notable features, special rules, and so on. And then essentially where to begin is really the advice for the game master. And then we get on to, and essentially, we've actually got some bonds there that will tie the player characters more tightly into Talon Hill. That really works essentially if you're running this as a one-shot. And then we get onto the description of the playbooks, and the playbooks themselves are, these are the player characters. So, we have a pug champion. There we go. I think possibly a possum chronicler. I'm not quite sure. Difficult to tell. Cherry on the envoy looks to be a bat. And then a heretical rabbit, best kind, and a mole seeker, or a mole who is a seeker, not someone who seeks moles, and essentially like a gecko exile. And then you can play through that, and depending upon how well you do, there's actually a list of the advancements, essentially what you can do to improve your character if they are successful and get enough ticks in their progression meter, essentially. So that's a nice addition at the end there. And then, as you've got the same at the beginning, you've got the weapon moves just inside the back cover, as you have the basic moves inside the front cover for easy reference by the game master. So that's the Talon Hill Quick-Start for Root, the role-playing game. If you've enjoyed this unboxing, then please do click on the like button down below. And of course, if you've got any constructive feedback, appreciate you taking the time to post those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to yet, penultimately, if you want to be alerted to yet more unboxings in the Nook, where you'll see me out here with a box and a book or game which I will unbox and chat about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea, then please do hit the subscribe button. And lastly, I want to thank David Salisbury at Fanboy3 for his generosity in providing me with all of these titles for Free RPG Day 2022. Without him, I would not be able to do these unboxings or indeed the subsequent reviews. So thank you very much, David. And if you are at all in the vicinity of Manchester and you want a good game shop, there is no better game shop than Fanboy3. It's excellent, great stock, helpful staff, all the board games you could ever want, and a really good role-playing selection as well. And every time I've been in there, I've always walked out with something interesting to talk about, to run or play. It's always been a great experience visiting. Well, thanks again for watching another Unboxing the Nook, and I'll be back again soon with another one. Bye for now.